This is the Mindset Game podcast. I'm your host, James Rhodes. This is the new name of the podcast now, which I will be going to be using now for the next foreseeable future, going away from the original name, Fit Amputee, powered by James Rhodes Fitness. And today's guest, I've got Ben Fildes. So, welcome onto the show, Ben.
Thank you very much, James. Great to be here.
So for the people that don't know you, can you give a brief introduction and a little bit more about yourself?
Yeah, so my name's Ben Fildes. I own a facility in Chester called S3 Fitness. This year we were nominated for UK Functional Training Gym of the Year 2016. Me personally, I've been in the industry a few years now and had my own business for close to 7 years now. Own fitness business for 7 years now. I'm personally a TRX training master trainer, a trigger point therapy master trainer, functional movement screen specialist, precision nutrition coach. Also done the Exos performance specialist certification, fitness specialist certification. I'm a rugby union coach level 2, swimming instructor level 2, a third degree black belt, and a personal trainer. I've done my kettlebell qualifications and functional range conditioning qualification, Welsh weightlifting, UK strength and conditioning courses. So I've got a few things under my belt, you know.
So it's good I left you to name all that, because we'd have been here all day if I. Cause you see some podcasts what I've done in the past, you can see the person kind of getting bored and say, come on, let's get on with it, and things like that. So I think in most cases they've been there and done it. So I think doing it an introduction and letting you introduce yourself is probably a better way of starting the show, and you can kind of give your own take on what you've done.
Definitely.
So you're touching on. So if we come back to that introduction and touch upon the fitness aspect of things, what was the kind of the catalyst for you wanting to get into fitness in the first place?
I've always been into fitness and health. Originally, I was a fully qualified firefighter for 13 years with Merseyside Fire and Rescue Service. I got into training at the gym solely to get into the fire service. The more I did it, the more I thoroughly enjoyed physical fitness. I found it interesting how the body adapts and how you can increase your muscles and the benefits of being fit and healthy. And while I was in the fire service, that's when I got qualified in my swimming instructing and did my martial arts and did my rugby union coaching. And when I decided I was going to leave the fire service to pursue a fitness or a career in the fitness industry, it was just a natural progression, to be honest. I'd always been physically fit, thoroughly enjoyed it, and it was the next stepping stone to forge my own career in the industry, really.
And then touching upon what you were saying in terms of the firefighting service and fitness, I could see a little bit of a crossover between being in the firefighting service and for what you do now, because there's a little bit of a similarity. Is that why you decided to go into functional training now, as to using a little bit of your expertise in your previous life?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, we used to train together as a crew. We had gyms on site and stuff like this, and it was nowhere near the facilities that we would have found beneficial. You know, we'd have an old rowing machine or maybe a treadmill and some various weights of dumbbells, certainly not incremental or anything. It was just like whatever over. So we used to do all that kind of stuff, but it was very much still the old bodybuilding, split sets, legs days, arm days and stuff. And then we got into circuit training. So we did do a lot of circuit training in the fire service. And then when I came out of the fire service, I think I came out of the fire service when there was an explosion of functional training, as in the kettlebells made a resurgence. More body weight was making a resurgence again. It was going, battling ropes were starting to come onto the scene. More people were, because of the explosion of MMA, so more people were taking up the boxing. So I think I came out at the right time when functional training was definitely starting to find traction again in the industry and take it up from there,
And then you touch upon a little bit there the differences between battle ropes, kettlebells, functional training. Can you give a little bit of a synopsis as to what are the benefits between the three in your personal experience, your personal opinion? Sorry.
Of the kit themselves?
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting, really. I mean, I love TRX and TRX and Master Trainer and stuff, but I'd hate to get pigeonholed as just the TRX guy, because TRX is an absolutely amazing piece of kit. But if somebody wants to come to me to learn how to Olympic lift, TRX isn't going to do much for them. However, if I get them to move correctly on the TRX and then get them on the bar, then that's beneficial for the pair of them. So, I mean, the TRX is great for getting to people move better and for bodyweight training and for core work. Obviously, if I then wanted to, going through the education that I've gone through, I can then look at battle ropes and they're great for cardiovascular, they're great for some explosive work, great for endurance work. Battle ropes for those. But again, kettlebells, absolutely brilliant again for posterior chain work, so really lighten up your glutes and your hamstrings. I love the portability of them and how such a light kettlebell, if you know what you're doing, can suddenly become the heaviest thing in the world, So I love the benefits of kettlebell training. The metabolic work you can get through kettlebells is unbelievable, So I think the biggest thing for me is a piece of kit is just a piece of kit. It's the education that then backs it up and gives you the knowledge for how to use that kit that is really, really valuable,
Well, that's a definite insight as to why, like you say, it's only a piece of equipment. It's what you do with it, not. Well, how would I say it? It's. Oh, I've lost my train of thought a little bit. It's not what you do. It's what you do with it, as opposed to what it is, but in not those simple terms. So coming back to the battle rope, well, I don't know whether or not to bring the story up or not, or yeah, go on. Obviously, I had the opportunity to train with you, or what would it be now? About 4 years ago, wouldn't it be? After
good while ago, wasn't it?
After London, and for the listeners to kind of put it in perspective, I'd just come back from the London Paralympics, give or say a few months or so, and I had the bright idea to get in contact with you to do a little bit of training, and I think you probably attest to and probably agree. We both probably thought that I was fitter than I actually was, and
to admit that's it.
Well, it's that mindset that I have. It will depend on the day whether I want to actually go into it.
Yeah.
And push myself that hard. Sometimes I won't, but that's the nature of the beast. It's not my it is and it isn't my profession anymore. Okay, from the aesthetical side of things, it is. So I need to be in shape, but to actually push myself to that point, like I did with you on that day, I'm not paid to do it anymore. So to kind of condense it in and cut a long story straight, obviously you had me do. Do you still have that battle rope then, that long one?
Yeah.
What was it? It was. Do you remember what the actual warm up was, or the time frame off the top of your head?
I can't remember off the top of my head, but we were doing doing little interval training, like a bit of HIIT training with the battle ropes, weren't we?
And to put it into perspective for you guys, I think it was. I'm gonna say you made me be sick at least once in the warm up, and I'm gonna say to date, have I been sick in a warm up? I'm gonna say that might be the only time ever that I've ever been sick in a warm up, and then okay, I had to lie down, caught my breath, then we did a little bit more, and then sick again. I don't know if it was because the confines of that environment that you had in big storage unit, or if it was that had a little bit to do it. Traveling in and having lunch. It's probably a multitude of factors that made me be ill. It's probably opened my eyes to the fact that you might think you're fit, but until you actually do something at a high intensity, you won't know. So it kind of puts perspective. And if I kind of bring it forward to what would it be? A few months ago, I was told by our what's his job title? So the chief exec for Disability Sport Wales. He said to me, "Oh, you should really be in Rio now." I was thinking, okay, I'll agree with you, but to a certain extent, if I take on reflection that comment and sentiment and analyze it a little bit more, maybe from the aesthetical point, yes, I look that I'm fit, but coming back onto that point, it is my profession to be in shape, so I need to be in, I won't say prime condition, but near enough that to be able to kind of guide people as to, well, I won't say if you want to look like me, because that's quite demeaning, but if you would like to get to that level of fitness, okay, there's commitment, work ethic, okay, time management, and all of those things obviously come into play, diet, and things like that. That is a part of who I am now. But if you looked at it from a sporting perspective, it would have to depend on what sport that was, whether I could compete. If it was anything to do with cardiovascularly, be it okay, my older sports of swimming, rowing, if I happen to go into another sport that is of that nature, no chance. I know for a fact that if I compared myself to back then, I'm nowhere near fit enough to be able to, one, I'll probably be able to do some facets of the training, but the harder stuff in terms of lactate tolerance, and just that, how would I term it? The stuff that's you're oxygen deprived and still having to bang out exercise, I probably would struggle a lot. Because, okay, to put it in perspective for the listeners, what was I training on average? It would be, as an aerobic athlete, it'd be anywhere near 30 hours a week. I think maybe at best I might be able to get 10 now. So it's putting it into perspective. I was doing 3 times as much, and that was my life. So I only had to train, we'll say on average 2 to 3 times a day, depending on what time of the week it was. Did we have to do gym as well and things like that? Whereas now I've only got to do one session and let's go to the gym and that's it. There's no, well, it will have a component of cardiovascular in it, but not to that extent. So to come back onto that point, we were discussing about training with you, Ben. I think there's not been very many times that when I've actually been training, that I've actually been sick, and to do it twice in one session, it's never happened. Okay, it might be a case of if you use, like you were saying with
We should say that wasn't the goal we were aiming for. I wasn't. we weren't going all out to make you sick or anything. Like I say, I think it was a few different factors were kicking in that day with the travel and the eating and stuff that caught you off guard as well. You know.
oh, it was probably coming back. It probably comes back to that mindset. Okay, well, in theory, I technically still was an elite athlete then, and it's thinking, well, to a certain extent, you're indestructible. Thinking, well, I was doing X amount of training, so I should be fit, but not taking into perspective the cardiovascular element. I'm thinking, well, volleyball is very much, which I finished my career on, is very much an explosive sport. It's, I don't know, a rally may last at maximum maybe, I don't know, a minute or two, whereas the other sports are very much, well, rowing for example is very weather dependent, so a race could last anywhere between, what are they ranging now? I think about 4 minutes. I think the quickest is to. Ooh, if it was bad enough, it probably could take up anywhere close to 6 minutes to do a race. So it's the actual strains on your body from a physiological standpoint are a lot greater. Sorry, on the aerobic side, whereas for me, well, I wouldn't say I was a fast twitch athlete to any degree. Okay, I probably, if you, well, I wouldn't know unless I did a biopsy to actually see, well, what this is your actual muscle type. This is probably my thought. Okay, well, I've never been quite good at sprints, so this is where I fit in terms of where I think my type fibers are. So I would say I would be probably more type. More, I'll get it. I'd be more slow twitch fiber. I'd have more slow twitch fibers as opposed to fast twitch. Whereas without doing the biopsy, I wouldn't actually know. So it could be I've been able to switch between sports, so I probably have a mixture. So that's one of those ones. It's half a dozen of one, half a dozen of the other. So what actually athlete? It's probably one of those. Most of the population are probably that. So you in most cases, I don't know where you'd fit in terms of sport. It's kind of you're a hybrid. So in some cases, some sports you wouldn't work because you're not dominant in one and you're not dominant in the other, so it kind of doesn't work. But then looking at it from a Paralympic perspective, I think I think I'll generalize a little bit here. I think with all the disabilities, they kind of adapt ways to make themselves better and get the best out of their disability. So coming back to a little bit less about me and back to you. Um, what do you believe to be some of the benefits of functional training as opposed to say Olympic lifting and when we touched upon a little bit off air, the powerlifting phases of training?
Yeah, I mean, what you've got to. I don't like saying functional training is the be all and end all, just like strength training is the be all and end all. I think the more tools you get in your toolbox, the more you're able to accomplish, basically. So what I would say is something along those lines. If I was going to say, where would functional training fit in to make your powerlifting better or something, I might say, well, I tell you what, before you get onto your powerlifting or your strength training, you could use the functional. Well, let's look at the powerlifting. You might look at increasing the range of movement by using some stretches, by using the TRX to improve those stretches or something. You might look at improving the depth of the squat by actually breaking the squat down, taking it off the weights, and using the suspension trainer or the TRX trainer to improve that person's squat by looking at the mechanics. Are they squatting correctly? Can they deload the squat so they then learn the pattern better? If they learn the pattern better, they're then going to get stronger in the squat. Olympic lifting, same thing again. What kind of can you go for getting ready for your explosive Olympic lifting by performing squat jumps, by holding onto the suspension training for a bit more stability and stuff. So functional training wise, that's where I would say they would marry in. Whereas if you said, well, I want to improve range of movement, yes, Olympic lifting's great for it, but it's not great for me mother in her 60s or something, so it might not be beneficial for her. So it's that thing of who's your client, what are they training for, and then, like I say, putting them on that individual piece of equipment. So everything, I think, like I say, everything's got its own benefits, and it's having that knowledge for saying, functional training for me is saying, right, what does James want to get better at? He wants to get better at his rowing. Right, okay, well, let's get him doing a little bit of strength training and a little bit of functional training, as in, let's get him doing some rows on the suspension trainer, putting the two together. So, whereas, right, my mum comes in, what is the function she wants to get better at? Well, actually, she wants to be getting better at walking up and down the stairs. Okay, then I'll get her on the TRX and get her to do some reverse lunges and stuff. That is her function that I want to improve is walking up the stairs. Yours is doing the rowing, so therefore you're going to do some weights and the TRX. She's just going to use the TRX. So functional training for me is what's your goal and what is the best piece of kit that would improve that, getting you to that goal, basically.
So yeah, well, it probably comes back to that philosophy of, which is probably all trainers should do, is adapting to the client and what the clients need as opposed to, well, this is what I do. We're going to just generalize every facet of training to kind of fit my mold.
Yeah, I love it, brother. You've hit the nail on the head. I learned a great phrase. It was a few weeks ago. I love my little phrases and tweaks. And one of them is that the client should fit the exercise. The exercise should fit the client and not make the client fit the exercise. So I think deadlifting is a great exercise. However, some clients, because of their build, then deadlifting with a straight, normal Olympic bar, no good for them. So would it be beneficial for them to do a deadlift using a kettlebell, or would it be better deadlifting using a hex bar? And a lot of the clients have got onto the hex bar, and because they can step into the bar, because the bar goes round them and it's closer to the centre of gravity, it's cleaned up so much more movement. So when it comes to deadlifts, that's what you do. So, you go, what can the client do? Let's get an exercise that fits them, not force them into a specific exercise because that's what you're great in. So, not everybody needs to Olympic lift. Not everybody needs to go on the suspension trainer. Not everybody needs kettlebells. But a lot of people need bits of everything.
And to come back to that point that you raised about deadlift and it not fitting some people's molds, is it a case of their technique isn't quite right, or is it a multitude of different things?
It can be a multitude of things. It can be that their technique isn't great, so you might literally stop them and go, okay, when have you deadlifted before? Well, I saw it on YouTube and now I've pulled me back. So it might be the case of, well, I tell you what, I'll teach you the correct technique. Now, does this clean it up? Yes, it does. Brilliant. That's how you work from there. Now, you might teach them the correct. Now, they might have, you might get two people who are exactly the same size, but one of their leg lengths, as in one of the girls might be, so they might be the same length, but one of them's got longer legs than the other and a shorter body. So which is actually going to put their mechanics out. So they've got two different sets of mechanics. So now it's like, well, you might prefer deadlifting with a bar, but you might prefer deadlifting with the hex bar. So now they both got great technique, but because of their body mechanics and leg length and torso length, it just might not fit the best, you know? So that's where you start saying, okay, your technique is great, but now actually let's try a different piece of kit and see if that fits you any better.
And for people, this is probably a generalization a little bit. If people didn't have access to a hex bar, what would your advice be in terms of, we use the deadlift as an example, what would they do if that was the case? Be it the technique isn't quite right, like you said, with the body mechanics is slightly off. What would those people do in that case?
Okay, so I would say, you know, now have a look at a different type of deadlift. So if you're going for a normal deadlift, do you need to adjust the hands width? Do you need to bring it in? So if you've only got a bar and your technique, first of all, look at your technique, have a look in the mirror, or I always get the stick. I always literally get a wooden dowel across, along their back to make sure their spine is in line and everything else. So have a look at your technique. If a normal deadlift technique isn't working, then there's plenty of different variations on that. So if you've only got the bar and you definitely want a deadlift, but the normal deadlift technique isn't working for you, now do you have to separate your feet a little bit wider? Now do you have to bring the hands into the center to adjust the grip a little bit better? Is there any way of maybe the bar, if you're lifting it from the floor, is actually too low for you to start with? So have you got any lifting blocks or anything that you can put underneath the plates either end to lift the bar up slightly? So now you don't have to go as low. Is that protecting your back? Does that feel better? Yes, it does. Well, then there you go. I almost call it like the Sherlock Holmes effect, where instead of trying to do so many changes and saying, right, I'm going to do this, this, and this, make one small change, and does that work? If it does, no problem. If it doesn't, try another small change. Does that work? So that's how it's almost like a power of deduction. So work your way through little changes. If it works, keep going. If it doesn't, don't do that again.
Well, it's something that you touch upon there, that you could, obviously from the fitness side of things, we also look at nutrition. That's something that you could, with the doing that Sherlock method, as you say, you could place into nutrition and say, well, especially with things that you say, quote unquote, are intolerances. Okay, you could do the same thing with that. Okay, take that out of your diet, see how you get on. Okay, it's not that. What's making me, we'll say, bloated, for example.
Yeah.
Okay, try something else, and then so on. And then you find the root cause as to what is causing that inflammation. And there you go. That's what you either have to exclude it completely or have it in moderation. But then you know that is the cause of the problems. But then without doing all those steps, you're just assuming, okay, I've got this intolerance, and you're just, I won't say victimizing, you're kind of putting blame on something which may not be the case that's causing something.
Yeah, most definitely. Yeah. Precision nutrition, that's one of the things that they go off is small changes over time. If you make too many changes over time, too many changes, all of a sudden you might not know what works, what habit is going to stick, what habits aren't going to stick. So yeah, I'm a huge fan of, as you say, taking that analogy and also putting it into healthy eating and stuff. Is small changes over time will make a bigger difference, you know.
And coming back a little bit, Ben, and looking at the differences between the different components of functional training that we were discussing a little bit off air. You were saying that they've brought out a new bit of kit. What for the people that don't know about TRX? What are the differences in the sort of equipment that you can get hold of nowadays?
Yeah. So TRX was originally invented and founded by former US Navy SEAL Randy Hetrick. The company's been going 10, 11 years now. They originally started with the TRX suspension trainer. brought out not only the piece of kit, but obviously the exercises and the education to follow that up. They then followed that up with the TRX Rip Trainer for rotational power and speed. They've recently, just this year, back end of this year, launched the new TRX Duo Trainer, which has been designed with Kelly Starrett from Mobility WOD, so CrossFit and stuff. It's their take on an updated and improved version of like Olympic ring training. So they've just brought that kit out. They're also bringing out their own line of plyo boxes, battling ropes, wall balls, foam rollers, mini bands, elastic bands. So they've realised that the suspension trainer is a great piece of kit, and that's why it's been used for many years now, and a lot of top flight athletes use it and stuff. But they've also been seeing that, again, it's as we were discussing off air, it's not only the kit, and we've mentioned previously, but it's not only the kit, but it's how to get the most out of that kit. So now that they're bringing out other lines of kit, they're going to bring out the education to back it up. And I mean, they already run their own functional training course, which is learning how to take the fundamentals that you've learned on the suspension trainer, the TRX suspension trainer, and then progressing that onto battling ropes and kettlebells and Olympic bars and all this kind of stuff. So that's how they're moving forward.
And from that, well, to a certain degree, I read into that a little bit, that there's kind of a merger to a certain extent, and kind of a cross. It's kind of a hybrid a little bit, isn't it? In terms of with bringing in the rings, it's kind of bringing that little bit of CrossFit element into it. Do you think? Well, what would how you say it's getting the best out of your training? So you might have to take different bits from everywhere. So you probably do a little bit of CrossFit training in your training. I don't know if that's true. Do you?
Yeah, I mean, we wouldn't do necessarily like the workout the days and all that kind of stuff, but we would definitely take, or I would personally certainly look at the elements that CrossFit use, as in maybe not a set amount of reps or whatever, but do we use pull-ups? Yeah, definitely. Do we use Olympic bars in our training? Yeah, definitely. Obviously the kettlebells, the rings I've had to play around on. It was Sod's Law that I bought a set of Olympic rings to go, yeah, let's have a play around on these. Started to play around on them, realised how immensely difficult they are. And then it was after getting the Olympic rings that TRX told us they're bringing out the Duo Trainer and stuff. And now that I am playing around on the Duo Trainer and having a go at that, it's with a lot of functional training gear, it doesn't look like much. But when you start using it, it lights up a whole load of muscles you never knew you had, and two, it's a lot more difficult than it looks, you know.
And kind of coming the end here and kind of wrap up the podcast, what would be one tip that you would give to the listeners that would kind of sum up this podcast in well, I won't say in a sentence, as to your best tip, should I say?
My best tip? Whoa, there's a question. I would say the difference. I love the phrase that functional training has made a difference in my life. So don't get me wrong. When I came out of the fire service, I honestly thought I was in really good shape because I was very much in the bodybuilders type mold of sets and reps and everything else, and that's great. The difference that I found that functional training has given me now is, I would say, I've got more muscles for show, more muscles for go and less muscles for show. So I'm in better shape now than I was when I left the fire service. I'm a hell of a lot older now, unfortunately. But when it comes to obstacle course races, or going out and just having a friendly game of football, or carrying shopping and stuff, or going climbing down the local centre and stuff, that is so much easier now. I've done obstacle course races like the Men's Health Survival of the Fittest race and stuff, and you can see the difference between people who do functional training and they're able to climb up the obstacles and or get under the obstacles and run, whereas the people who might do the traditional type of exercise, which gets you great hypertrophy and stuff and gives you an awesome body to look at, but then that body doesn't necessarily perform as well as it could do. So so functional training gives you all the muscles for go rather than muscles for show. So if that's what you want, if that's what you need, then functional training is the best thing. And to be honest, one of the best tips is speak to your good self or look up a trainer. Never be afraid to ask for help. That's the biggest thing. Don't be ashamed to ask for help getting into shape, or don't be ashamed to ask for help getting nutrition advice, and look up fellow professionals like yourself.
And kind of wrap it up there, Ben. In terms of if somebody wanted to ask you any further questions, how would they go about getting hold of you on what should I say? What is the best form of way of getting hold of you on social media?
Yeah, so I'm on social media. I mean, I'm on Instagram at S3_fitness. Same with Twitter at S3_fitness. Also on Facebook, S3 Fitness is on Facebook. Twitter's probably the one I check the most and get my hands on. So any questions or comments, feel free to drop us a tweet on there. It's not a problem. I'll be more than happy to get back to you and stuff. So yeah, that's probably the best one to get hold of me.
So once again, Ben, thanks for coming on the show and sharing your insight into functional training.
No problems, mate. I appreciate being asked. It's very kind of you, sir.
Well, it's my pleasure. So, and for everybody else, this podcast will be aired every Thursday. So until next week, I will see you then.